The room was loud with voices, boots scraping on the floor, and the clinking of glasses. Generals sat in their pressed uniforms around the long wooden table, their shoulders heavy with medals. And in the middle of it all, a young woman moved carefully, balancing a tray filled with steaming cups and plates. To them, she was just a servant, someone to carry food, someone invisible. No one gave her a second glance. She kept her eyes lowered, hiding the truth about who she really was. Her hands trembled slightly, not from the weight of the tray, but from the weight of her secret. Each step she took was measured, careful, as though the floor itself might betray her. She had worn a uniform once too, not the servant's dress she had now, but one marked with courage and sacrifice. And among her few possessions, hidden away where no one would think to look, was a small medal glinting with silver, the Silver Star, awarded for bravery under fire. But here, in this room, no one knew her past. The generals saw only someone brought in to serve them, someone beneath their notice. Still, every word they spoke, every order they discussed, she listened to with sharp focus. She had lived through battles they only read reports about. She had saved lives while others hid. And now she stood close enough to pour their drinks while they laughed about things she had once bled for. Then, as she placed another tray down, one of the generals paused. His eyes narrowed, not at the food, but at her. Something about her movements, the way she carried herself, didn't match the role she played. And when his gaze dropped to the faint outline of a ribbon hidden beneath her collar, his hand froze. The room kept buzzing with noise, but he stared at her as though he had just seen a ghost. Who was this woman they had mistaken for a servant? And why did she wear the Silver Star, a medal reserved only for the bravest among them? The answer would change everything. The general's stare lingered, sharp and unblinking, as if he were trying to peel back the disguise with his eyes alone. The others around the table didn't notice, their laughter echoing against the high walls. But she felt the weight of his suspicion pressing harder than the tray in her hands. Her heart beat faster, though her face betrayed nothing. She had trained herself long ago to remain calm when every instinct screamed otherwise. She shifted slightly, pretending to adjust her tray, and memories flickered through her mind. Once, not long ago, she had stood in a very different room, dust filling the air, radios crackling, and wounded voices calling out for help. She hadn't carried trays then. She had carried the wounded. She had pulled comrades out of fire, risked her life to protect others, and proved herself in ways most soldiers never had to. The Silver Star was not given lightly. But here, all of that seemed erased, hidden under a plain dress and the role she had been forced to play. The general's fingers tapped slowly on the table, his eyes never leaving her. She wondered if he remembered her face, if perhaps their paths had crossed in some forgotten battle. Or maybe it was only instinct, his soldier's sense whispering that this woman was not who she appeared to be. She straightened, careful not to reveal more than she must. In the back of her mind, questions pressed harder. How long could she keep her secret here? What would happen if they discovered who she truly was? And most importantly, why had she been placed in this position at all? Nothing about it felt like chance. She knew that in a room full of powerful men, her presence meant more than just serving food. The general's voice finally broke through the noise, low and measured. And with that, the air in the room seemed to shift. Something was about to change. The general leaned back in his chair, his voice cutting through the chatter like a blade. "You. What's your name?" The question seemed casual to the others, but she caught the edge in his tone. Every muscle in her body tensed. She lowered her eyes, giving the name she had been told to use, the one that fit the servant's disguise. But she could sense it. He wasn't convinced. Around the table, the other generals kept talking, arguing over maps and movements, their words spilling with strategy and pride. Yet his silence was louder than all of them. He studied her like a puzzle, as if he were digging through layers of memory. She remembered stories of him, how sharp he was, how nothing escaped his notice. Of all the men in this room, he was the one who could uncover her truth. As she stepped back to the edge of the chamber, her mind raced. She thought about the orders she had overheard already. Plans that could change the course of everything outside these walls. Was that why she had been placed here to listen, to gather, to wait for the right moment? Or was it something else, something deeper, tied to her past that refused to stay buried? In the shadows near the doorway, another figure watched her quietly. Not a general, but a younger officer. He had seen her before, though not in this role. His eyes flickered with recognition, and for a moment she feared he might speak. But he didn't. He only kept watching. His silence its own dangerous question. The tray in her hands felt heavier now, though it was nearly empty. She wondered how long she could keep playing this part before the truth forced itself into the open. Somewhere deep inside, she knew the clash was coming. And when it did, no one in that room would remain untouched. The room grew heavier with each passing second. Maps lay stretched across the table, covered in markings of battlefields and supply routes. But the real battle was happening in silence between her and the general's unbroken stare. His eyes followed her every move, sharp and calculating, while the others remained lost in debate. She kept her steps measured, careful not to reveal the storm inside her chest. The younger officer still lingered in the shadows, his jaw set tight as though holding back words. She could almost hear his thoughts, the weight of recognition pressing down on him. One wrong glance, one slip of the tongue, and everything she had worked to conceal would collapse. She gripped the edge of the tray, her knuckles whitening, steadied her breath. Then the general spoke again, louder this time, drawing the attention of the room. "Tell me," he said, his voice calm but laced with steel, "where did you learn to stand like that?" His question silenced the table. Every pair of eyes turned toward her. The laughter and noise drained away, leaving only the pounding of her heart. Her throat tightened. The way she held herself, the posture drilled into her from years in uniform, had betrayed her. She opened her mouth, but before she could answer, the younger officer stepped forward as if to shield her or expose her. His boots struck the floor with a hollow echo, each step building the pressure in the room. The generals exchanged uneasy glances, sensing something deeper was unfolding. Suspicion spread like fire across their faces. And at the center of it all, she stood caught between silence and revelation, between survival and truth. The air seemed ready to break, as if one word, one movement, would ignite everything. She braced herself, knowing the moment she had been dreading was no longer far away. The climax of her secret life was closing in, and no one, not even the generals, were prepared for what was about to be revealed. The silence in the room was so sharp it felt like a blade. The general's question still hung in the air, but before she could find an answer, the younger officer stepped closer. His voice cut through the stillness, low but clear. "She doesn't belong here." Every head turned, the tension snapping tight. His words carried weight, not accusation alone, but certainty. Her pulse quickened. He knew. Whether from a shared battlefield or whispers of the past, he had seen her before. The general's eyes narrowed, demanding more without speaking. The officer hesitated, then added, "I've seen that face before. Not in kitchens or corridors." She was out there, where the fire was falling. His words cracked the image she had been forced to wear. The generals leaned forward, unsettled, questions flashing across their stern faces. If what he said was true, why was a decorated soldier serving as a maid? What purpose was hidden in her silence? She felt the room close in, their suspicion now sharper than any weapon. But just as the tension threatened to spill, a knock echoed at the heavy doors. A messenger hurried inside, his face pale, clutching sealed papers. He whispered something to the nearest general, who stiffened. The documents were passed down the table until they landed before the one who had been questioning her. He scanned the page, his jaw tightening, then slowly lifted his eyes back to her. Her breath caught. She knew what those papers contained: her name, her record, the proof of everything she had tried to bury. The timing was no accident. Someone wanted her exposed at this very moment. But who had sent it? And why now, when the room was already cracking with suspicion? The tray slipped slightly in her hands as she realized the stakes had shifted. It was no longer about hiding. It was about surviving the storm that was about to break open in front of them all.